Yeah, so this is mic number 1. Oh, we need to find out if Bob is.
On the wireless?
Yeah. A little quiet. Number 1. I mean, it's hard to. Yeah, just maybe maybe a little bit. Okay.
Let us know when you're ready. just working with CCTV to get the live stream up for those that are going to be watching on BCTV. So I appreciate your patience. Just a couple more minutes and we'll get started. Thank you. He's not a night person. He's up at like 4 in the morning. Yeah, it doesn't. I should have put on a data to determine that food is set out in school. I know, right? Been 3 years? but it's live on Facebook. Okay. Okay. All right. Are we ready? Hold on. Listen to the countdown. Hi, and welcome to the College Info Night for seniors, class of 2021. I just want to start off by thank you for your patience. We're trying to get things up and running to be able to live stream, but have some technical difficulties. So we apologize and appreciate your patience. We're also going to be trying to do two things at once. We have the presentation happening here that's being recorded, as well as the Google Meet. So again, new things, new technology during these very strange times. So we just appreciate your patience. For those of you in the Google Meet, if you can make sure that your microphones are shut off to help with feedback. And also, just you can put questions in the comment section for us to answer. We are going to do all the questions at the end. So if someone doesn't respond to you in the comments, please know that we will get to your question. We're going to read them out loud live so everybody can hear the answer, because many times the questions that are asked are ones that everybody can benefit from hearing the answer to. So as we get started, I just, again, want to welcome you. The counselors are going to be presenting some information, and this year's presentation is going to have some new information and some new tips for you based on the changing times and the changing face of college admissions this fall. We look forward to presenting all of this information for you. Just to move forward, I just want to introduce the counseling staff. We have 7 counselors broken down by alphabet, and they will be helping your students. I'm going to try to move so that, because I'm getting some feedback with the microphone here. So we have 7 counselors, and they all are broken up by alphabet. Your students, I'm sure, know them well at this point in their high school career at Bedford High School. They've had their junior meetings. They're scheduling their senior meetings. So they're going to present to you the information you need to navigate this college admissions process. And the most important thing is just to always communicate and ask questions either via email or a phone call. That's what we're here for. And we know that this is a stressful and anxious time for students, and we want to support them the best we can. So please reach out as much as you need to. Have your students reach out as much as they need to. And with that, I'm going to hand it over and let Mr. Pelletier get started with some great information. Oh, sorry. Mrs. Matson is going to start us off. My apologies.
Hi, good evening, and thank you for coming. So up here are those faces that Ms. Jocks was talking about, and is our alphabet breakdown in case you are unclear about who your or your student's counselor is. Just a little note that this process or this presentation is focused on the college process. We do support students' future plans and goals, no matter what they are. There is a lot of information in this particular process, so that's why we're focusing on it tonight, and that's the focus of tonight. Really specific questions about your student, I think are usually best to be sent to your school counselor so that the person who knows your student best can answer that question with you. But like Ms. Jacques said, we're happy to answer general questions. Just a little snapshot of last year's senior class, so the class of 2020. We wanted you to see kind of what the alums are often doing and how they handled the college application process. So as you can see on the screen, last year the class of 2020 as a whole submitted over 2,400 applications. About 83% are currently attending a 4-year college in some way, whether it's remotely or in person, and about 11% are attending a 2-year school. The rest of the students are in the workforce, military, or gap years, things like that. So that's about 94% of our students are attending a 2 or 4 year college. From last year's class, these numbers have been pretty consistent the last few years. If you do the math, that averages to about 9.5 applications per student. So I think that's actually an interesting and helpful number to look at. I feel like I talk with a lot of students who apply to around that number. Keep in mind, however, that some students apply to many, more than that, and some students only apply to one college. So that is just the average that I just told you about. In terms of college matriculation, so where is the class of 2020? They're all over, and they're also very local, and they're all over the United States. Some maybe went even further than that. Our highest number is 35 students at UNH Durham this year. And that's pretty typical. Since 2010, I believe the number has always been over 30 and sometimes as much as 60 students at UNH Durham. Southern New Hampshire, that has gone up in recent years. That's 19 students. Plymouth State is 12. So you can see that a lot of students are at those in-state colleges studying. You can also see some of the other popular schools last year, and this changes year to year. For example, Norwich had 6 students from last year's class who are attending this year, which was unique to this year, but sometimes we see trends like that. The last few years, the Alabama has been really popular, UMass Amherst, colleges like that. And keep in mind, this is not applications, this is students who are attending the colleges. So just a little context for you as we get going. A senior year timeline. So I won't go in too much detail about a lot of these topics because that is what Mrs. Mulcahy and Mr. Pelletier will be doing, but I wanted to provide you with a snapshot of what senior year may look like. So some parents maybe have done this before with older students. Students, this is your first time doing it, so it's important that we review it. There's a lot to it, so even if you have done it before as a family, it's good to review. So things that seniors should be doing now as we head into the fall and the winter. They should be definitely scheduling a meeting with their school counselor, a senior meeting. So that is a one-on-one meeting with their school counselor. You've probably seen lots of emails from us about the senior meeting. It's very tailored to the student and their individual needs and goals in terms of the college process. So we work closely with them on developing that college list and kind of going through a lot of the nitty-gritty with them, getting their Common App and Naviance matched during that meeting and going through a very detailed to-do list that we have for them. Some of the items may apply to them and some may not. But I think a lot of students find that senior meeting really helpful because it is so applicable to them. Our calendars do fill up quickly, given that those meetings take a long time. Your students are busy in classes, so we do book a few weeks out, so they do want to get on our calendars sooner than later. So they can just send us an email, and we will figure out a time that works to have a Google Meet. We are having the senior meetings through Google Meet this year remotely, which has been working really nicely. You can share the screen, look at it together, look at the applications together, look at the to-do list together, and it is actually easier than sitting 6 feet apart, I believe. Another thing that students can be doing now is registering for any final standardized tests they may have to take. Again, Mrs. Mulcahy is going to talk about this a little bit more. Seniors are taking the SAT as a class here at the high school on September 23rd. They do not need to register or do anything like that. They will be receiving more information about what to bring and the procedures for that day, but they will all be taking that test on September 23rd. We've had a lot of questions. It does include the essay, so it's the critical reading, the math, and the essay section. A lot of students are wondering, should they take it again? For many of them, that is the first time they will take it. As you've probably seen, a lot of colleges are test optional this year, so that becomes a personal choice. If you're looking at schools where they're still requiring standardized tests, you might be considering taking it again so you can try it twice. Often our scores go up in at least one section the second time. However, you might be saying, oh, everyone's going test optional this year. Definitely all my schools are. I don't think I will be taking it again. It becomes a personal choice. You want to look at your school's requirements that you're looking at, see if they are requiring the SAT, either for the school admission in general or maybe for a specific scholarship you're interested in. But from what we're seeing, most schools are test optional for this year. So while there's a lot of cons to this year's college search and application process, for some students, that might be a pro for sure. So again, you don't need to register for the September 23rd test. You may need to register on your College Board account for another SAT, or if you're taking the ACT, which we don't offer here at BHS, you would be registering on your ACT student account. Again, specific questions, you can definitely talk to your student school counselor. Requesting letters of recommendation. So many students have done this process, maybe last spring, maybe this fall, maybe this summer. They have talked with 2 teachers that know them well and requested letters of rec, both in person or via email or a meet, and then also in Naviance. So again, I think Mrs. Mulcahy will be talking about that, but that is an action item for this fall, for very soon. You want to get those recommendation letters requested so that teachers have time to write really thoughtful letters and get them in for you on time, so you're not worried about it. Continue visiting campuses. I know this looks a little bit different this year, but all of the schools are offering virtual tours. Some are pre-recorded, YouTube video, for example. Some are live virtual tours where a student will take you around. I think some of those I've done a few of them. Some of them are really great. You can get really good information. And I would say always register for those tours, those info sessions, those open houses you're doing online so that you can get the most up-to-date information for the school and they know you're interested. And start the year off strong. That's another important thing for this fall. Your senior grades matter all year long. All year long. You got to pass your classes and you got to do well. But definitely those fall grades will be on your transcript when you apply. So those are some things to do now. Most important being starting the year strong and scheduling that senior meeting. Later this fall, or maybe as we roll into the fall, you will actually meet with your school counselor. You will complete those transcript requests in Naviance. So you will tell us, I am applying to these schools, I need my documents sent. And Naviance is the vehicle we do that with. We will show you a little bit more about that later, and you will get help with that. Your student will get help with that in the senior meeting. Also in the fall, we're completing requests for score reports. So if you do apply to a school that needs scores, you do need to send official score reports of those SAT scores. You're continuing to visit those campuses and get good information from those schools. And you might be starting your financial aid forms. So the FAFSA becomes available October 1st, and we'll talk more about that later. Also in the fall, you will be actually filling out and submitting some applications if you are applying early action to schools or maybe even early decision. We'll talk about that more a little bit later as well. Heading into the winter, we're looking more at the financial aid and scholarship season. So a lot of students are always wondering, when can I start those scholarships? And it's usually a little bit later, a little bit after you get started on the college process. You're going to be filling out and submitting regular decision applications into the winter. January 1, January 15, February 1 is a common deadline for those. You're going to be finishing your financial aid applications as a family, and you're going to be searching for and applying for those scholarships, which your students will get lots more information on in the winter. That brings you into the spring. You're getting your decisions. You're hearing from schools. You're comparing your financial aid packages. You are maybe hopefully visiting campuses in person to see what you like or getting information from those schools in other ways, and you're making your decision by May 1st. So that is a little snapshot of your senior year from now through the spring. Narrowing your search. So that's a big focus in the senior meeting, is narrowing students' college search and really finalizing that list. Sometimes we meet with students and their list isn't quite ready yet, so we might follow up with them again in a few weeks. But you're really focusing on getting information about those schools so you can make a list that meets your needs and is a good fit for you. Keep in mind, fit means a lot of different things, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Consult your school counselor. We really like what we do, and a lot of us have been doing it for a really long time, and so we've heard about different schools, but we're also good at just asking questions when we don't know the answers. For example, this year, there are some answers we don't know. So we know how to point you in the right directions and how to help you pick up the phone and call admissions officers. So use your school counselor, ask them their advice. If they don't know the answer, they will help you get it. Use Naviance. It's an awesome tool. Our school has had it for a long time, and it's a really great search tool as well as a vehicle to sending out your materials. Utilize different college search engines. So there's some helpful ones up here, the FISC Guide to the Colleges. I know some of the counselors love that one. You can read a little snapshot on some of the colleges. My Options, which used to be Admittedly, is a great free website for searching for schools, plugging in things that you want in a school and seeing what results come up, sort of like in Naviance. Peterson's Guide to the Colleges. College Board also has a great search tool for searching for colleges. Part of narrowing your search is getting that information through campus visits, open houses, info sessions to help you make the decision. So you're not applying to 40 schools and you're not applying to 2 schools. You have a nice balanced list of schools, which we will talk about. And sometimes you have interviews to help you narrow your list, make that decision. Interviews are as much for the college as they are for you to get information. And this year, I would say another pro is that a lot of those can be done remotely. So instead of you traveling to a school, if they require or offer or suggest an interview, you could have an interview on a Google Meet, which might be more convenient for you. So that's a little bit about narrowing your search, which we'll focus on in your senior meetings. Someone move me ahead? Okay. Okay, so when we think about narrowing our search, we think about a 2-2-2 approach, which is something we have talked a lot with your students about through their humanities courses and in meetings with them. But this is just sort of a rule of thumb for making sure you apply to a couple of safety schools or likely schools, a couple of target schools, and a couple of reach schools. So you don't have a really heavy school of, or list of reach schools, for example, and make sure it's just balanced in general. And when you're coming up with that balanced list, again, this is a rule of thumb. You might have 3-3-3 or 3-2-3. It's a rule of thumb. So we want to make sure it's balanced, and that's what we help you do in your meetings and when you ask us questions and when you send us emails. We want to make sure you have enough likely schools and target schools as you go through this process. Think about major and cost as you're making that list. Those are really important factors. If you're kind of considering a certain major and the school doesn't have it, then it might not be a good one, might not make the cut on that list. If a school has great financial aid and you don't have enough financially safer schools on your list, then you might want to think about adding one of those to your list. And always think about fit. So is this school a good fit for me? It doesn't have to be all of the schools that you've heard of because your friends are applying to them. You want to apply to schools because they're a good fit for you. Your interests match the school's profile. Fit is academic, it's social, and it's also financial, and it's about finding a balance between those things. So is this going to be a good fit for me academically as a learner? Is this going to be a good fit for me socially as a student and a community member? And how about for our family as a financial decision? So we want you to think about that as you make those choices. Just a side note too that we put up here, the pandemic might change the landscape of those likely target and reach schools for us. There are a lot of unknowns. For example, some schools maybe had a lot of students defer last year and they might be more competitive this year. Some schools maybe didn't have that issue and maybe they're less competitive this year. So there's lots of different factors at play and we're not exactly sure what's going to happen. So we're going to make sure that you guys have enough of those likely schools on your list. This is a snapshot of virtual college visits. So in the past, you might be familiar with college representatives coming to Bedford High School and meeting with students in small groups and giving them some information about that school's application process and their school in general. And those rep visits are still happening, and they're happening virtually. And students are getting biweekly emails with the updated schedule of all the visits that have registered to come and meet with students through Google Meet at Bedford High School. So know that those are there. You can also log into your Naviance account and click on the What's New section and see all the visits that have signed up, and you can sign up to join them. You also should be getting automatic emails from Naviance/your counselor if you have a college on your list. So if I have Bentley on my thinking about list, I will get an email notifying me that Bentley is coming for one of these college rep visits. So we just want to make sure you guys know about that as you're exploring your options and making your lists. Yeah, we just wanted to focus a minute or two on engaging with colleges during the pandemic and make sure we give you the confidence that it is still possible. It just might look a little bit different for you. Colleges are accustomed to students coming from far away, so some of these things are second nature to them. They're used to having Google Meets to spread information or connecting with students through email and the phone, et cetera, et cetera. So we just want to make sure that you are still engaging with the colleges, asking your questions, making sure they're a good fit, and doing that just like you would any other year. I know you might not have an in-person tour at every school or maybe at any schools at the moment, but you may do those virtual tours that we talked about. You might hop on that virtual tour and have a student take you around and get an experience in that way. A lot of students have told me that they are connecting with alums from Bedford High School who might attend the school, or, you know, my friend's brother attends this school and I'd like to know more about it. I'm going to ask him about it and get his experience at the school. If you have social media, no pressure to have it, but students could follow a college on social media. It's always interesting to see what they show. You might see some lovely buildings. You might see certain majors highlighted all the time, and that gives you good information about what's going on at a school. Also, it's always interesting to note how the school has handled the pandemic. I think that tells you a lot about a school. Was it in an organized fashion? Again, if you know any students who went there or you've been connected with any current students through the admissions office, you can always ask those types of questions from them. How was the spring for you when you had to do remote classes? And how is it now when you're doing some remote classes or when maybe you're back in person at that school? So these are all good ways to engage with your schools and students who maybe attend those schools, even though this is a very different year. So again, feel free to ask us any questions. We will try to help you get the answers if we don't have them. I think Mrs. Mulcahy is now going to speak with you about all of the parts of the application. So that's the exciting part.
Very exciting. Thanks, Mrs. Mattson. So you've done all your research and your student is working on where they're going to apply. But what are those essential parts of the application? What do they actually have to do? Well, the first thing that a college looks at, the most important thing, is the transcript, because the transcript shows the day-to-day, year-to-year, every course with every grade, your GPA, your number of credits, the real-world hours that show engagement in extracurriculars and experiential learning. So there's that piece. Then there's the standardized tests, the SATs or the ACTs. This is a different year for that. Many colleges, even if they require these tests, have made the decision to be test optional this year. And so the best way to know what a college that you're planning to apply to, what their requirement is for that, is to check the college website, to go to the admissions website and check on application requirements. The application itself, all of our seniors are either have started their applications or they're looking at which colleges to apply to. They might apply via the Common App. They may apply with an institutional application. And within that application, along with listing personal information as well as courses that they've taken through high school, they'll also list their activities. They'll upload their college essay. And if they're using the Common App, for example, even though the application itself can be sent off to a number of different colleges, there may be a page specific to the college the student is applying to, and it's called a supplement. And so if you're applying to a college that requires a supplement, there's a few extra questions, and you have to make sure you do that. Also, letters of recommendation. That is usually a requirement for most college applications, and we're going to talk in a minute about how many and who should be doing that. Some majors require portfolios and auditions. And depending on what you're applying to, for example, if you're a fine arts major or maybe even an architecture major, you might have to put a portfolio together. Or if you're applying for a performance major, you may have to do an audition. And auditions might look a little different this year because of the pandemic. So again, going to that college's website and looking at specifics, if either of those things is required, is a good idea. For our athletes, anyone that may be applying to a Division I or Division II school hoping to play a sport needs to be involved with the NCAA on the NCAA Eligibility Center, and you can just Google that through NCAA and sign up for that. Oh, I just know it's going to work. What's that? Point up here. No, still not working. We're going to get that next slide, I promise. I'm pressing every button. And the lovely Mrs. Mattson is going to help me. There we go. Letters of recommendation. So in the spring, juniors at the time, now seniors, we went into classrooms and showed students, and we also had our junior meeting and showed students how to request a letter of recommendation. What colleges usually want to see are 2 teachers and 1 school counselor recommendation, and it should come from teachers who the student feels has a real understanding of their learning style, may know them well in a particular way. So students were encouraged to ask in person, and then COVID happened. So if they didn't get a chance to ask in person, we encourage them to send emails. It's not too late to do that if as a senior you may not have done that yet. But for many of our students, they have done that part, and then they send an email through Naviance. And we work with them if they haven't done that yet in their senior meeting to make sure that happens. Because when a teacher gets that email in Naviance, not only does it remind them, oh yes, I did remember, I did tell John I would write that recommendation for him, but it also allows the teacher into that student's account so they can upload their letter. So 2 teachers, school counselor, when students put things in Naviance, which I know Mr. Pelletier is going to tell us more about, when they let us know when they're applying, that's when we know when our letters of recommendation have to be ready. Oh, thank you. Types of admission. So you have all this information about how do I do an application and what are all the pieces of it. Well, when do you send it? There are different application deadlines, and there are 4 pretty standard ones and then a 5th one we'll talk about briefly. So in every school, they may have a variety of these types of admissions deadlines. One very common one is early action. Early action is a great deadline because it allows a student to apply early, meaning it could be as early as October 15th or go all the way to January 1st. And when it's early action, it's called non-binding, which means that you can apply to as many colleges as you like if they have that option of early action, and you will find out early whether you've been accepted or not. And it's kind of a psychological boost to know, oh, wow, I got into a college. Whew, that feels good. But you don't have to apply early action because if they have early action, they're also going to have regular decision. And regular decision is just what it sounds like. They have a number of different deadlines. So one college's regular decision might be as early as November 30th if you're applying to a California school. Several of them have that deadline, or it could be as late as March 1st. It's up to the student to know those deadlines. Early decision is a binding early application. And what I mean by that is a student, if they are really sold on a college, this is their be-all, end-all school, they've talked with their parents, everyone agrees it's a good school to apply to, and they want to show the college that this is their very first choice, they can apply if the college has an early decision deadline under early decision. But it's binding. Both the student, I shouldn't say both, all of us, the student, the parent, and the counselor all sign an agreement that says, yes, we understand they're applying under early decision, and if they are accepted, they will pull any applications they've already sent out, and they will apply to no more colleges. So if one of my students does that, I'm not going to send any other transcripts or recommendations out for them if we find out that they got into that school. So that is a more serious in terms of, yes, I know I'm going to do this. And you find out early and you're done. All your other friends are waiting, wondering where they're going, and you know where you're going. Rolling admission means you can apply at any time. You can apply tomorrow if you want to, or you can apply in March. And the college will review it, and usually within 4 to 6 weeks, you'll have an answer. Restrictive early action is very rare. Just a few colleges have this. It tends to be the colleges that are much harder to get into. And while you can apply early, when it's restrictive, it means you can only apply to one college under early action, no other colleges early at all, but you can apply to as many regular decision colleges as you want to, and you don't have to make your decision until May 1st. You are not bound to that one school. So that is those are the different types of admissions deadlines. So who submits what? We have all this information, who's doing what. And as you can see, if you can see our little graphic, the student, the bulldog, is in charge of their destiny. They are the driver of the ship. So the application is theirs, whether it's the common application or it's the institutional application or coalition, they're the ones to send that out. Then there are test scores if they are required and if the student is planning to send them. And the student must contact the testing agency, College Board or ACT, and they have to ask for those electronically to be sent to each individual college. And I will tell you, for both applications and test scores, when you're hitting the send button, have a credit card handy because it costs money for each one. And then there's the transcripts, the school portion, the letters of recommendation, your transcript, our school profile. And the school counselor does submit those, but they don't submit them until the student tells us where they want them sent through Naviance. And that's where Mr. Pelletier is going to take over and talk more about Naviance.
Thank you, Mrs. Mulcahy. I'm going to walk you through a few very important aspects of Naviance that are really required for students to be able to apply to schools and submit their transcripts and letters of recommendations. Without these few steps that I'm going to walk you through, it wouldn't be possible for students to complete the application process. So once students are logged into Naviance, they will have to match their accounts with the Common App. In order for students to be able to match their Common App account with their Naviance account, they're going to have to go over to colleges I'm applying to. And when they do that, most students are going to see a red bar at the top of the screen. And this means that there's some information that they need to complete in order to match the Common App with Naviance. So in order to match the two accounts, they're going to click on Match Accounts. And then there's going to be a screen with some information that they need to supply. Their email address has to match the Common App's email address. Otherwise, the accounts won't match. So once they complete this screen, they'll click on Match Accounts. And if they've entered the information correctly, they'll get a green bar at the top of the screen. They'll say, congratulations, the accounts have been matched. When this occurs, students are able to request teacher letter of recommendations and transcripts. So that's a pretty important part. So students need to complete that before they really do much more work within Naviance. Afterwards, they can go to colleges I'm thinking about. And then I'll show you how students can add colleges that they're interested in to this list. So students can click on Add College to the list. And they'll be able to use a pull-down menu, a search feature, and there is a list that appears alphabetically. And if they click on the box and add a heart to a college that they're interested in, then the school will automatically get populated to the colleges that they're thinking about list. If students click on the name of a college, so if we click on Assumption University, there's a lot of information that'll be available for students in helping with their college search. So if you look at the tabs up top, there's several tabs. The first one's the Overview tab, and that's general information that's going to be provided for students about the college or university. And if they scroll down a little bit, you'll see just some broad information about the price of the school, how many students attend the school, different types of degrees and certificates that they might offer. And then scrolling back up, and under the Studies tab, students will be able to explore some of the different majors that the school offers, the size of the classrooms, student retention, which can be important. So the retention rate of schools demonstrates how many students come back each year. Under the Student Life tab, this will give a small snapshot of the student population and the student body. So it's pretty much the demographics of the school. And under the Admissions tab, it'll show the deadline, the application fee, and then there's an interesting scattergram. So the scattergram towards the bottom shows the SAT average and the average GPA of Bedford students that have applied to this particular college. The check marks show the number or the accepted students and where they landed on this graph. The X's demonstrate students that were denied. And then what's really neat about this is there's a little blue head in a circle, and that'll show where your GPA and your SAT lies in comparison to other Bedford students that applied to that college. So this is a really helpful tool in helping you to determine whether a school is a likely school, a target, or a reach school. And COVID-19 really has changed the landscape a little bit. And so definitely work with your counselor in helping you determine where those schools lie for you if you need some guidance. And then the really important tab is the Cost tab. Students don't usually click on the Cost tab, but this will show you the tuition, the annual room and board, average net price, and how many students attending the school receive financial aid. And so now if we go back to colleges I'm thinking about, I'll show you how to add those schools to make those schools colleges that you're applying to. So if you click on the box, and then you can move the school to the application list. And once there, you can select the deadline. Every school is going to have different deadlines, so give this a lot of thought and just make sure that you select the appropriate deadline. And this is really going to help you organize your applications. It's also going to show your counselors when you're applying to certain schools so that we can make sure that we get information out in a timely manner. Once you select your application deadline, then you can click on how you're going to submit the application. So most schools is going to be Common App, but other schools use different applications. It could be the Coalition app. Some schools may still do pen and paper. So be aware that you have to select how you're going to submit the application. And then you can add and request transcripts. The first transcript that you request, or the first time that you do this, it'll be the initial transcript. And once that information is added, then your application materials are in, and they're ready to be sent. So it's a pretty exciting time for a lot of students when they officially apply to their schools. We've held 6 common application workshops the first week of September. And we are going to hold another one on the 25th of September for students that may need a little bit more training or may have missed or not been able to attend one of the first 6 workshops that we had. And throughout the year, we're going to have Wednesdays available for seniors from 11 to 12. And this is a period that's set aside for them to be able to come to the Student Services Office to talk to us about the application process, answer questions for them, and to really support them through that process because it's their first time applying for schools. So we've set this time aside to make sure that they get the support that they need. On October 8th, NEEF will be here giving a virtual presentation on the financial aid process. NEEF are really the experts in financial aid. They are up to date on laws, and especially this year with the interesting COVID-19 pandemic that we're all experiencing, they're going to know how that climate of the atmosphere of financial aid has changed for schools. They're also going to be up to date and knowledgeable about what schools may be offering differently this year than they may have traditionally over the past years. So in brief, talking about financial aid, we had mentioned that it's important that students pick a school that is going to be financially safe for them. So although it's an exciting time, students sometimes overlook the cost of schools. That's not the tab that they often click on. They want to look at sports, they want to look at degrees and majors, and learn about the campus. And a lot of times they leave the cost up to the parents. So have that conversation with your kids, guide them into what's going to be a financially safe school so that when they're selecting their colleges, they're able to do that. There are financial aid deadlines, just like they are application deadlines, so be aware of those. And please, if you're able to come to the NEEF presentation on October 8th, join us for that. You'll find it valuable. Attending college fairs to help with the financial aid process could be quite valuable because admissions counselors from colleges are the front lines in getting your kiddos into school, and they're going to be the best research in terms of what schools are going to be offering or what they can offer this coming year for financial aid. So the big questions this year are, what's going to happen this year for my student in college? Are they going to be able to go? Are they going to be able to get financial aid? Which schools are test optional? Are schools going to be more competitive because they are test optional? These questions are changing on a daily basis. It really is a fluid situation. School counselors in Bedford are in contact with admissions counselors, and when we meet with our students one-to-one, we share this information with them, what we know, as it changes. Information that we have, we're also going to include in our biweekly newsletter so that families and students can be up to date. But I would really encourage students to attend college fairs, virtual fairs, have meeting with college admissions counselors because they're really the ones that are up to speed on their situation in their campus. The NACAC, the National Association for College Admissions Counselors, is an awesome resource to stay up to date on what fairs are available both at the state level and nationally, and SATs. So if you have questions or trying to figure out whether you should submit SATs to a test optional school, maybe you can find some information through the NACAC that will help you out. And we are now going to take your questions. Thank you.
I just want to thank you all for your patience, and thank you to Mrs. Mattson and Mr. Pelletier and Ms. Mulcahy for presenting tonight. We are going to take questions, but I do want to just take a minute and just kind of take a deep breath. That was a lot of information. It goes by very fast. We really want to emphasize the importance of your student and yourself reaching out to your school counselor for that senior meeting and any questions, because each student is so different and the process is so unique, and it also changes all the time. Having a current senior myself who's having to go through this process, I'm living it with you, so I get it. And what she thought was a definite plan 3 weeks ago is now completely different. So that communication with the counselor and with your student and just keeping all those lines open to help you through this process is probably the most important piece of all of this. All of this information that you see in the presentation, we review with the students. Also, if you don't have your own Naviance account, parents can have a parent account, so you can log in and you can see what your student is doing in there. You can check to see if they've requested recommendations. Can't do it for them through the parent account, but you can see what they're doing and maybe give them a gentle reminder that they should be setting up their senior meeting or requesting transcripts or letters of recommendation. So if you don't have that account, again, you just reach out to your student's counselor and they will get you all set up right away. So I'm going to go over to the Google Meet and we're going to start looking at questions. And then we have Mrs. Bennett and Ms. Lipinski and Ms. Palmer who are present in the Google Meet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the question aloud so everybody can hear it, and the people who are going to watch on BC TV can hear the question, and then I'll put the microphone over to the Google Meet because they are going to be the ones that are going to answer. Okay? So, hold on a second. Okay. So I'm just trying to get over here. So one of the questions was about listing out awards in your application. So as you're completing the Common App, there is a section for both activities, also for honors and awards. Sorry. So you want to definitely go through that section. And if you attend one of our Common App workshops, the counselors can help you go through and find that. It's also something we have on Wednesdays, open office hours through Google Meet. You don't need an appointment. It's every Wednesday, and there's counselors there that students can just drop in and ask a question. So you could pull up your Common App during that time and actually go through the section that you're not sure where to put information, and they can help you walk through each of those. The next question was about portfolios, and that's a great question. For some students, have all different types of portfolios. It might be art portfolio, it could be engineering or STEM, it could be an athletic website or videos. Most applications are going to have an opportunity for you to attach that, and depending on the school, if they're looking for that, depending on your major, that will be an option. If it's not in their specific application, and it's something you want to send, you can do it through their website by finding the college admissions person that's your representative and sending it via email as attachments. But typically you can attach those to your application if it's an important part of your application for your major. That comes with sometimes with dance, music, there's auditions. And again, this goes back to that uniqueness of each student in each application process and having those meetings with your counselor to go over those things. I don't have any more questions in the comments section, so I will just give a minute. Sorry about that. I meant to allow our counselors on the Google Meet to answer those, and I did it for them. My apologies. It's so hard to do too. Yes, you can, please. Yep, go ahead.
Mrs. Mattson was so nice to send some literature out there about the admissions process. And just since we brought up the portfolio, one part of the article that I read was that portfolios and additional information is going to be really important in this application market, in this application pool. And even more schools may consider doing interviews to get to know their students better because they're not going to have those test scores to review. They need some additional information about character and involvement and who the person is. So, you know, our students work so hard with their portfolio of work, and many students are very proud of that. It might be a nice addition in the additional information section of the Common App for your student to put a link into their portfolio of work if indeed they're proud of the work that is in there. So just a thought to help sort of fill that gap that's going to be left by test scores, and even for some students who couldn't participate in extracurriculars last year and maybe even this year due to the pandemic. So just a little additional information since that question was brought up.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have an additional question they'd like to ask? I will post this presentation, so it'll be available as a PDF, as well as the BCTV video will be available as well. So thank you guys all for coming. And if you don't have any questions, we will see you tomorrow at school. Bye.